Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to scour the barren wastes that occupy idle men's minds with the 2019 tale, The Lighthouse. Let's get on with it. We open on two men aboard a schooner, zipping toward a beacon on the shore. They've arrived as keepers of the light, contracted to a 4-week stint, employed in its maintenance and left to the solitude of their own company, which is occasionally punctuated by the droll moaning of the beacon. Upon settling, Winslow the keeper finds his bedroll fecund with a sort of greasy, decrepit hair, and a curious talisman of the sea. Later at dinner, Thomas the wiki and commander warns Winslow against leaving a toast unfinished. However, touched with the sickness of ill spirit that accompanies some men to drink, he attempts to substitute and finds the cistern rotten. They squabble over regulations and duties, wherein Thomas claims the light as his sole domain. While Winslow is deafened in the boiler room, acclimating himself to his responsibilities, Thomas ascends upon the backs of angels and gazes into the opalescent face of his new god. At dinner, we learn that Thomas's prior keeper succumbed to madness, enchanted by the light and foretold by omens of despair. Winslow, finding a want of superstition, is curtly cuffed and warned from shirking caution by disturbing birds of the sea, thought to carry the spirits of wayward sailors. And later, after a pecker appears, Winslow makes a withdrawal, and then wonders aloud of the wiki's attraction to the light, to distract from discussing his aptitudes towards swabbing and other jobs, a cycle that continues incessantly. A fortnight through their shift, we learn that Winslow has high hopes of earning a wiki's wages, to save up and settle somewhere, but Thomas seems to recognize the telltale signs of a man with something to hide. As this drudgery wears on, Winslow gets more and more restless about his curiosities as regards the light. He approaches timidly, but upon reaching the gated platform finds the door locked, and only narrowly avoids an errant insemination. The next morning he discovers the well's gone black, and upon examination, ascertains its defilement the result of a lost soul. Indignant at the idea that his fate may be wrenched from his grasp, he immediately endeavors to employ his worst insult, throwing caution to the wind and eliciting the rumblings of a severe nor'easter. A storm of this ilk is dangerous for their small treeless rock, so they commence to batten down before celebrating Winslow's scheduled retrieval the next morning. They then feast upon Dagon's children, enjoy a snifter of rum and a warm affection. Thomas encourages him on his journey, confirming he'll be working the lamp in no time. Winslow, in a flight of fancy and eager anticipation, still wonders about having his way with the goddess of the rock, resulting in momentary apprehensions from Thomas, wholly unwilling to divorce himself from the truest wife he's ever had. The next morning he awakes with his trousers about his knees, and nary an empty chamber pot to be found. His attempt to rectify the situation is confounded by an omen from the sea. He goes about his work and happens upon a maiden betwixt the rocks and weeds, who's revealed to be a daughter of Poseidon. Winslow runs off, but finds himself bereft of the courage to reify his experience in Thomas's presence, and silently awaits the porter instead. When it fails to arrive, they prepare to weather the storm, but Thomas discovers the damp's gotten to the provisions, and the foodstuffs taken to rot. Winslow finds himself untroubled by the news, until Thomas reveals that choppy waters have previously stranded keepers on the godforsaken island for months at a time, and then Thomas immediately takes to retrieving the emergency provisions. They drink to excess, and, taken to expressing the black thoughts that crowd his soul, exacerbated by his miserable station, Winslow incurs a curse insurmountable in altitude and unsurpassable in breadth, and he willingly submits under the force of his tongue, as would a lowly cur. With no choice but to continue on, they commence to undertake their respective duties, and fill their free time with various leisures of masculinity, such as erotic sculpture, ejaculations, drinking, line dancing, tender caresses, and fist-fighting. Too long alone now with his thoughts and drink, Winslow reveals his true nature, recounting an incident on the logging trail in which he observed a worker, Ephraim Winslow, fall and be swallowed by the logs on the river. He, presently identified to be Thomas Howard, assumed the identity of Winslow and moved along. In the shadow of this revelation, he finds himself confronting himself and his new master of light. Winslow is unable to escape the rock, and unsure of his reality. Now unmoored and desiring to fade to nothing, they conspire to intoxicate themselves with the kerosene as the storm wreaks havoc on their quarters. As Winslow begs again to be let into the lantern, Thomas initiates another row. Now completely untethered, Winslow ignores signs of the curse previously brought to bear and becomes the new master, leading his dog to its resting place. He becomes distracted from his burden by the lure of the keys, and is only brought back to his dark task at the insistence of Thomas, which ends his days wandering this realm. Winslow then ascends the stairs, finding the light opens willingly to him, and he partakes in its glory, but well beyond his tolerance, resulting in a violent descent to the rocky beach where he's pecked, clawed, and fed upon, only to be lapped up and swallowed by the infinite waters of the dread Emperor himself. And that was The Lighthouse, a charming tale of lust and madness, rent from the dark recesses of the devil's bowels, trod upon and torn asunder by its miserable bitch mother, then devoured and defecated upon the page. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.